I'm feeling high, my little lady. I'm going to take the other side. You know I used to smoke too much. You know I used to drink too much. Take a ride in my car. You can get me high, high, high. You know I used to smoke too much. And you know I used to drink too much. Take a ride in my car. We're gonna get real. I'm feeling good, my little lady. She's gonna take me to the other side. I'm feeling nice, my little lady. She's gonna keep me moving on. I'm gonna run till I drop to the break of dawn. Never gonna stop, she's gonna treat me right. I'm feeling good, my little lady. She's gonna take me to the other side. You know I used to smoke too much, and you know I used to drink too much. Take a ride in my car, and you can get me high, high, high. You know I used to smoke too much, and you know I used to drink too much. Take a ride in my car, and we're gonna get real. Come on, baby. Let's take a ride. I don't know where we're gonna go, but first, let's dance. You know I used to smoke too much, and you know I used to drink too much. Take a ride in my car, and you can get me high, high, high. You know I used to smoke too much, and you know I used to drink too much. Take a ride in my car, and we're gonna get real. Oh.
Hi everyone, Dan here, and I just wanted to put a little snippet about AstroWorld and what we do because I want to start getting the word out because I think it's becoming more and more of a giant community, and I want to get the word out to some other people. So what we do at AstroWorld is we hold astrophotography chats on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. and Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And we just talk astrophotography. Wednesday's more of a techie kind of advanced intermediate, and Fridays is more of a newbie kind of thing. So if you want to check us out, and if you want to, hang out with some semi-decent people that like to go off the rails a little bit and have fun while they're doing it, come check us out at astroworldweb.com, and you can check out the schedule, and you can sign up for all the free giveaways that we do. We just gave away an Eagle 4 Pro, an Optolong filter kit, Charles Brackenstein's books, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So come to astroworldweb.com, hang out with us, have a good time, and as always, remember to keep imaging, keep educating, and clear skies. And I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Things are becoming intense. I rip
my jeans on your fence, hiding away from your man. Oh, it's a passion. Oh, tell a tale of 1,000 lonely days. Yeah, she's the real thing. Yeah, only I can make a change. If you want to be together, it's so good to be together with you. If you want to be together, Deborah, I'm getting caught in the rain, standing here calling your name. Guess I got no one to blame. Yeah, it's a small town. Yeah, all the people turn and stare. Oh, it's a secret. Hey, let them see me. I don't care. If you want to be together, it's so good to be together with you. If you want to be together, if you want to be together, it's so good to be together with you. If you want to be together, say you want to be together. I'm feeling really guilty, but it feels so bad. Yeah, so good to be together with you. We did it before, and we can do it again. I'm tearing out my hair, 'cause I don't know when so good. You want to be together, yeah, 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 yeah. It's so good to be together with you. Yeah, so damn good. If you want to be together, it's so good, it's so good, yeah. What the hell's wrong with my telescope now? Damn, what's wrong with this thing?
The lost Lone Ranger, can I break this spell? I do one thing right, do I make two things wrong? If I want that fine line, I will always take it wrong. If I don't
I wonder what it was that made me want you. She couldn't understand what made me hard.
She's climbing in out my open window. I'm laying here alone and cold and drained. Yeah. So take another breath and come up for your oxygen. And now you wanna kiss the flesh and blood of every man, every man. And when the moon is full and the wolves were held, she swam across the lake just to get to my house. Yes. And she said, I want more. Give me more. Disgusting. I want more. A little bit of. Give me more. Disgusting stuff. Disgusting stuff.
She looks upon a world that's dark and tangled. I never saw her turn her head in shame.
She's coming in out the open window. I'm lying here alone, cold and gray. So take another breath and come up for your oxygen. Hey, you know you wanna kiss the flesh and blood of every man, every man. Well, we all took turns and it's one of the world. I never realized they had said with us, man. And she said, I want more. Give me more disgusting stuff. A little bit of disgusting stuff. Disgusting stuff. Oh, you're making me disgusting stuff. A little bit of disgusting stuff. Give me more disgusting stuff. Yeah, a little bit of disgusting stuff. I want more.
Hi everyone, Dan here, and I just wanted to put a little snippet about AstroWorld and what we do because I want to start getting the word out because I think it's becoming more and more of a giant community, and I want to get the word out to some other people. So what we do at AstroWorld is we hold astrophotography chats on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. and Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And we just talk astrophotography. Wednesday's more of a techie kind of advanced intermediate, and Fridays is more of a newbie kind of thing. So if you want to check us out, and if you want to, hang out with some semi-decent people that like to go off the rails a little bit and have fun while they're doing it, come check us out at astroworldweb.com, and you can check out the schedule, and you can sign up for all the free giveaways that we do. We just gave away an Eagle 4 Pro, an Optilong filter kit, Charles Brackenstein's books, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So come to astroworldweb.com, hang out with us, have a good time, and as always, remember to keep imaging, keep educating, and clear skies. And I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Winter, spring, summer, and fall. Doesn't matter what season at all. New York boy, trouble again. Well, times change, so do men. Don't you know the monster that's finally set me free? Don't you know the monster is down on his knees? Can't you see? Can't you see? Can't you see the change in me? A proud man gonna touch the sky. A proud man never gonna die. He's gonna give it a little more throttle. He's finally thrown away the bottle. Don't you know the monster has finally set me free? And don't you know the monster is down on his knees? Can't you see? Can't you see? Can't you see the change in me? Can't you see? Can't you see? Can't you see the change in me?
What the hell's wrong with my telescope now?
You know I used to smoke too much. And you know I used to drink too much. Take a ride in my car, and you can get me high, high, high. You know I used to smoke too much. And you know I used to drink too much. Take a ride in my car, and we're gonna get real. Oh, I'm feeling good, my little lady. She's gonna take me to the other side. I'm feeling nice, my little lady. She's gonna keep me moving on. I'm gonna run till I drop to the break of dawn. Never gonna stop, she's gonna treat me right. I'm feeling good, my little lady. She's gonna take me to the other side. You know I used to smoke too much. And you know I used to drink too much. Take a ride in my car, and you can get me high, high, high. You know I used to smoke too much. And you know I used to drink too much. Take a ride in my car, and we're gonna get real. Come on, baby. Let's take a ride. I don't know where we're gonna go, but first, let's dance. You know I used to smoke too much. And you know I used to drink too much. Take a ride in my car, and you can get me high, high, high. You know I used to smoke too much.
All right, what's going on, everybody? We are here for another Wednesday night with special guest Warren Keller for his first appearance, and it's amazing. You know, as a solo guest, first appearance on here, and you know what? It's amazing. How did it take us so long to get to you? I don't know what happened. It's like it's crazy, but it's wonderful to have you on. Of course, Warren. It's
Great
gonna
to be here.
a lot of fun. But before we get started, we should get the sponsors and talk about the sponsors, not only our corporate sponsors, but our member sponsors, and we'll go through that really quick. And here we go. All right, and let me get. Oh, we lost Warren. Hold on a second. Layers and Jesse, and where is? Yes, there we go. There you are. All right. And there we go. Good. Awesome. So we do have corporate guests and corporate sponsors, and we also have a lot of member guests as well. But our first sponsor, we have Woodland Hills Camera and Telescopes at telescopes.net. They've been very generous to us, and they give us gift certificates to give away every month. So thank you to Woodland Hills. Moving forward, we have Primaluce Lab, Camera Concepts, and Optolong. And if anybody out there would like to be a sponsor, feel free to hit me up at dan@astroweb.com, and you could definitely become a sponsor at one of our levels and get on the big board. Our Supergiant level, and Warren is part of this, Masters of Pixinsight and IP4AP. They both have been extremely generous and giving us, actually, we're giving away a year subscription because it's Warren's night. We're going to be giving away a year subscription of IP4AP and a Masters of Pixinsight workshop. And their next workshop is next Tuesday, the Tuesday before NEAF. So go check it out. I believe it's Photos to Photons number 12. So it's going to be a lot of fun with that. We also have a lot of member sponsors, and if you'd like to be a member sponsor, you could join us on Patreon. We now have 28 people on Patreon supporting the show, along with, I think, about another 30 people on YouTube supporting the show. So thank you for everybody, but I do like to give everybody a little screen time for being a member. And thank you to our Quasar members, John, Hassan, and Chris. Black Hole members, Charity, George, Mike, Dave, Dan, and Tom. Red Giant members, Main Secret. Look at all these members we got. It's crazy. And we just picked up one tonight. Thank you, Clayton, for joining us on YouTube. And White Dwarf members and Protostar members. Thank you, everybody, for coming and supporting the show. It means a lot. Thank you so much. If you missed it, it's up there. Stacy Downton last month was with us. Go check out that. That's a lot of fun. That was a great show, Eric. You know, it was really, really cool. But
yeah, it was.
And then we got Warren tonight, Masters of Pixinsight and IP4AP. There you go. So he's going to be hanging out with us. Coming soon on the 21st after NEAF, we'll have Pavel Kagas from Moravian Instruments.
Cool.
Yep. So he's going to be coming on and hanging out with us and showing, maybe giving us a little description of the monster that he has holding in his hands right there. That's amazing camera. Amazing cameras. Definitely going to be cool to come hang out with him. And then in June, we have Helena Cochran from Helena's Astrophotography is going to be coming on with us and hanging out with us. So that's what we got going on for future guests. And of course, feel free to join us on our other social media platforms. On Discord, we're up to about 128 people on Discord. So a lot of good times. Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, YouTube as well. So thank you so much for, I'm cutting this spiel quicker. I think I'm down to like 5 minutes now. It only took me 3 years, but you know, I got it down to 5. I got it down to 5 minutes. So Warren, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out. I know NEAF is coming, and you got a show coming up on Tuesday, and you know you have another workshop, I believe, Photons to Photos number 12. I can't believe you're up to number 12 now. Wow, it's amazing. Right. But thank you so much for hanging out with us. Why don't you introduce yourself for some of the new people out there that may not know who you are and what you do and have done, and give us a little background.
Sure. Just as a side note, it was really neat to see Pavel there from Moravian. That's somebody that I've, emailed with several times in the past, and we actually did have a loaner camera from him in New Mexico. So it was great to put a face to a name. So I'm Warren A. Keller. I have been imaging since 1999. In 2005, Pete Prue, my partner in Buffalo, New York, and I began IP4AP, image processing for astrophotography.com. We really were the first, video tutorial company on the internet with astro image processing tutorials on Photoshop, MaximDL, AstroWorld, and then at some point we became what we call Pix-centric, when Pixinsight really became the rock star of image processing platforms. In fact, I remember it was a NEAF and a NEAC where Joe DiPasquale, the science imager from now James Webb, then Chandra, spoke, and so did Vicente Perez. Came from Spain, from the P team, Pixinsight, and it was very clear to me as I watched all of these 50 to 70-year-old guys running from class to class with drool coming out of the corners of their mouth, that PI was indeed the future, and that Pete and I would be dead in the water if we continued down the Photoshop path. So with much trepidation, I began to learn Pixinsight. Probably one of the earlier adopters, and certainly one of the very first to start teaching it, at least commercially for sure. And the DVD, optical media, went the way of the buggy whip, and we became a streaming platform IP4AP, again, image processing for astrophotography. And at some point, we decided on Masters of Pixinsight, where we make you the master of Pixinsight, and we folded IP4AP into that. And they're kind of two separate entities. IP4AP is a subscription model and more scripted type of tutorials. But the thing is, PI changes so quickly, and it's hard to keep up with that type of material, and impossible to keep up in print. Some of you may know that I was the author of what's called the definitive guide to Pixinsight, called Inside Pixinsight for Springer Nature, going back, I guess, about 2016, and the second edition in 2019. But that book is really long in the tooth already, and it's frustrating to me. You know, I have high integrity, and I like to communicate the latest and greatest information, but the folks at Pixinsight, Juan Canajero, Roberto Sartori, they're all about change and improvement and just constant better, right? Sometimes the enemy of good is better, but it became impossible to continue to document in print. So I actually put the kibosh on a third edition of Inside Pixinsight, but you can still find it on Springer Nature, Amazon, Google Books, and it's worthwhile. There's a lot of great information in there, but you will find, like, where's this and what's he talking about? And this doesn't exist anymore. And that's a shame. But again, the Masters of Pixinsight.com model is live workshops with the latest and greatest information imparted, you know, on a casual, off the cuff way by myself and our newer partner, Dr. Ron Breacher. He and I do most of the teaching. Pete Prue is still our partner behind the scenes as the host of the live broadcasts, and also webmaster for the most part. But those are recorded, and then those videos are available for $35 a pop, which is pretty darn reasonable. So, you know, you mentioned, Dan, P2P, we call it, photons to photos, which is kind of what I'll do tonight, which is just an A to Z, process a particular type of image, a particular type of object. And we'll also do more, I guess, formal, you know, segmented stuff like newbies and dialing down the noise and dialing up the detail and masks unmasked, you know, all of these clever little names for these important segments in astrophotography. But as Dan and I were chatting before we went live, was things are changing really fast. Processing is definitely getting easier. We're definitely in a golden age of image processing. I can't tell you how difficult it was to milk out detail and structure and all the good stuff from, you know, Adobe Photoshop, from Maxim DL, when the data wasn't as good and the tools weren't as Astro specific, right? It was all about constant experimentation. Hey, did you know that this will do that in Photoshop, even though it's not designed to do that? But now we have, you know, PI, and we have some other platforms that people are excited about, and the introduction, as we'll see tonight, of artificial intelligence, or at least machine learning trained tools that make our jobs much easier, much better, much faster. And as a user, as a processor, that's fantastic for you guys out there, and for myself, because I still love to image process. But as a teacher, you know, there's coming a day, I don't know that there'll ever be the APOD button, as Pete Prue talks about, but we're not so far away from that point where, again, some of the major steps are so easily accomplished by some of these newer tools. So, you know, a friend of mine years back at one of my wife's jewelry wholesale shows in Philadelphia, he taught me the concept of the buggy whip maker. And he said, you know, you could be the best buggy whip maker in the world, but at the end of the day, you make buggy whips and there are no buggies anymore. So again, things are changing. And, you know, there's going to be a point where, and unfortunately, that's the way of technology.
Yep.
And sometimes things get so easy that some of us are, less motivated to keep at it. And it's defeating, frankly. I mean, great for you. Applaud you folks. Bravo. We're seeing imagers that have been at it for a year, 2 years, and they're putting out stuff that took us 10, 12 years to really get to that result, So it's it's sobering, but good on you guys.
Yeah, we talk about it on the show a lot as well, where we sit there and say, I've been imaging for a while too, and I remember when I remember guiding with the reticle eyepiece, and that kind of stuff, and then a piece of software came out. Yeah, no, you had that too. Yeah, so then finally a piece of software came out, and I didn't know what it was, so I bought it, and I said, okay, wow, we could use like a camera and do stuff, and like not have to sit there and put things in the crosshairs and everything, and I'm sitting there, and it was a piece of software called Guide Dog. And I don't know if you remember Guide Dog, but Guide Dog, whenever you lost, instead of hearing the beep, whenever you hear that nice little beep that gets annoying and picks in PhD, when you lost a star, you just heard a bark. And it was woof, woof. And that was it. And I'm going back quite a bit, but I mean, yeah, I hear you. Going through the motions and doing this since for me, it the late 80s, early 90s, and moving forward, it's definitely the change. And even in just me and Eric and Pete talk about this all the time. The change in the last 5 to 7 years alone is just ridiculous. Forget about 35 years, but it's definitely,
that's that X. Right.
Yeah, I mean, Warren, you're absolutely right. We're in the golden age of image processing. We're in the golden age of technology for, astrophotography. There's so many things that have hit the market that are more accessible to people, and that have more moderate and modest budgets, and and everything, but want to take advantage of this hobby of ours. And it's just amazing, the changes that have occurred, so yeah. And I saw that Pete Prohl, he just hopped on and said hi and everything. Yep. So pretty cool to see him hopping on here and hanging out with us, a fellow member of Masters of Pixinsight. But yeah, I mean, it's like, what is going to come next? Especially, you mentioned you're going to go through, artificial intelligence, the uses of how artificial intelligence has made such an impact on everything. It's just 1 minute. It's going to be crazy. What's going to happen in another 5 years, or even less than that? What's going to happen next year?
Yeah, really.
Right. Absolutely. Yep. Correct.
All right. Actually, you got your first question out here. I'll put it. You didn't even start. You're getting questions. So
yeah.
I'll throw it up on the screen. Warren, processing question for you. How would you combine data from a one-shot color with a broadband and dual band filter? Example, the NBZ and Moon and Sky Glow. So combining, combining NBZ data with narrowband with broadband data. I think that's what he's getting at.
Well, I mean, that's kind of a heavy thing to be hit with now. And every object, and every object, every situation is so different, what I'm thinking of in that question is, an RGB natural color type of image, perhaps a nebula, where you're then introducing some oxygen 3 or some hydrogen alpha that you've acquired through one of the narrowband type of filters. And they're really pretty complicated steps and not something I could really easily say right here. There are many ways to do it. One thing that comes to mind is using a different deburring method called superpixel and extracting just the red channel and just the green and blue channel, so that you've got an oxygen 3 contribution in the green and blue, and you've got a pure hydrogen alpha in the red. And then it really becomes a very judicious decision-making process, because they don't really marry easily or well, right? It's kind of like, do I want this pretty natural RGB nebula with some enhancement, let's say, of an HA or O3 shell around something like a planetary nebula? And that really has to be done using masking techniques, using pixel math techniques to just subtly introduce those reds and those teals without corrupting the natural color of the image. And so again, it's a more advanced technique. And I would say, you know, for newer folks, you know, get your RGB, get your good natural color down, get your color and tricolor narrowband stuff down before you really dive in full force and try to combine this stuff, because again, it ain't natural.
It ain't natural. But if you
his mind ain't right. No, it's tough. It's a more advanced process for sure. Not something I could easily. I mean, we have the NBRGB script, which is designed for narrowband plus RGB, but it doesn't work as well, again, as a specific pixel map expression using, again, masks.
and I would tell you, you know, if you really want to learn about it, take a lesson from Warren. You get on his calendar and learn about it, you know.
Yeah, I do one-on-one instruction. Our partner Ron Breacher does one-on-one instruction, and we do have some narrowband classes that we've done at mastersofpixinsight.com, as well as over the years with the IP4AP segment of Masters of Pixinsight.
Yeah.
You know, Josh does bring up a good point with, you know, the advent of these newer filters and everything, especially in how one-shot color cameras have taken off. Is that something that you will, or you and Ron and Pete maybe discuss, maybe having some sort of class that maybe at some point that's focused a little bit on the one-shot color data, especially with these, these multi-band pass or these multi-band narrowband filters, is it something that, may be on the horizon for you guys if you haven't, really, I'm not sure if you guys have really touched on that a lot.
Yeah, we have touched on it, and it may be something that we'll just want to do a very focused class on tonight if we have time. I would try to add a little bit of hydrogen alpha to the H2 knots of the galaxy that we'll process tonight if we have time. So that's one example. It's monochromatic, but it's a blending of narrowband with broadband data. The filters, they can be used for OSC, as we were talking about, standalone, where they produce a close to natural color result. Or again, they can be combined in a bicolor type of way for a narrowband look.
Right.
How's that for dancing around the issue?
That worked perfectly.
Nice.
Let's see. Just answering some stuff in the chat. And
Awesome.
all right. So you have something planned for us, I think, tonight regarding some processing.
Yeah, it's galaxy season coming up, as they say, and I had been working on something the last few days, NGC 1187, but I you know, that's kind of a little bit obscure. And I looked at masters that I had and I said, hey, you know, got something on the Whirlpool M51, which I mentioned on Facebook that I had really overcooked the last time I processed it. So I thought, hey, that's a good, I thought that was a good target. So should I share?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we could do that, and we'll make you larger.
Okay. Oh, that's my camera preview. Okay, this
toggle.
Yeah.
There you go.
And window, Pixinsight share. Yeah, it's interesting. Everybody's changed their interfaces now. We found this with our last go-to meeting, where you're actually pointing to specific browser
different
tabs
windows.
Or windows. Yeah.
Sometimes that acts a little funny too. So sometimes it's easier to just do entire window.
Yeah. So does that look okay?
It does now. Yeah, I'm gonna turn off the crawl, and there you go. It's all yours.
And I'll minimize us, so I'm not seeing my own screen on my second screen. So
there you go.
As I've said many a time, I myself personally tend to be, as Pete Prue can attest, very minimalistic in many areas of my life. And one of them is I like a nice, clean workspace. I'm almost like, talk about AI, I'm almost like a robot when I process. It's pretty sad for an alleged artist, but I'm kind of robotic. And, you know, I like a minimum amount of Explorer windows, which is just the process console, which is information on what we're doing, and the History Explorer, which is very important, particularly in the context of a Pixinsight project. And I also have, you know, very specific toolbars that I like out. You can control all of this from Explorer windows, opening and closing what you need at any given time. Toolbars, you can choose what you want to see. Because as a longtime user of PI, you know, I know about keyboard shortcuts, I know about context menus, and as with any program today, you have so much redundancy of how to accomplish the same thing. So that's kind of important to me. And I've got the masters stacked up over here. Again, you don't need to be as neat and obsessive as I am, but I tend to like my masters stacked in one corner. And as we proceed, I'll kind of have working images and tasks and stuff stacked specifically. And of course, you have multiple workspaces in Pixinsight where you can reside things that might work for you. And, you know, from the beginning, since I first started learning Pixinsight from my friend Harry Ian Page, that many of you may well be familiar with, I was all about the icons, new instance icons, and really adopted those very early, seeing how powerful working with those are, aligning them, let's say, in a chronological way, rather than having to constantly fish for individual processes in the drop-down menus and such. So with that said, I'll get started. We have a monochromatic luminance on M51, pretty nice data from a gentleman named John Batts, who I haven't heard from in probably a decade, so I tend to think of him as the long-lost Johnny Batts.
Johnny Batts.
He was nice enough to share that with me years ago. And as I observed that, that's a great luminance. It's got some really nice detail. The stars are good quality. You know, normal Gaussian noise distribution, not too noisy at all. And I do observe if I put a boosted auto stretch on there, you know, we start to see that there is certainly a gradient where things are brighter up top than they are down below. And then, of course, we have an RGB, red, green, blue here, and also a hydrogen alpha. And everything has been registered, aligned really in one shot in the past. And so everything is now registered together. So where do you start? you could really choose either one, right? If you're working one-shot color OSC, you really just have that one RGB master, but in a monochromatic situation, you got multiple masters. So there's a choice. Do I start with, you know, the grayscale with the luminance, or do I start with the color? As I often tell people, you know, it doesn't matter, but I'm a color freak, a color lover. And I have a little subheading, a small like sub chapter in the book, and it quotes Bad Company, or paraphrases Bad Company. It's good luminance gone bad. I remember good loving gone bad. Well, it's good luminance gone bad. And that was inspired by, you know, you would see, hey, I got to start on this new object, and here's my luminance, and everybody's, ooh, wow, that looks great, fantastic. But then, OMG, you know, 2 or 3 days later when they would publish the color version, you go, what have you done? So, you know, color is 3 channels, and triple the chances of going awry. A lot of our male image processors seem to have color blindness issues. And it's just, you know, it can be difficult. So as a color lover, I often begin with chrominance, because I like to put that together sooner than later and say, oh, good, no, I've got good data here. It's not, you know, horribly corrupted by light trespass, or it's for whatever reason, the sky conditions, the atmospheric extinction where it was taken in the sky. It's like, no, this is going to add up to be a good image. And frankly, if it wasn't, I would park that luminance somewhere and either image or try to get a hold of some quality chrominance. So with that said, you know, why don't we start with the color? And I'm going to open the channel combination process in Pixinsight. And again, if you're not familiar with where these icons come from, it comes from here, from the new instance arrow. And when those get dropped on the desktop, they can be named. They can have a description added, and the beauty of them is that you can change values of a particular process, and when you write or overwrite by drag and dropping, you can store your settings at any point and save that out as an icon set. So that's a lot of information. If you're new to PI, at mastersofpixinsight.com, we do have a 5-part primer that will get you used to navigating in the program, where everything is, how things work on a mechanical type of basis. That's a great quick start. And speaking of quick starts, Pete Prue, who's joined us tonight, Pete is now, as we speak, basically working on a new quick start page so that you can get in and quickly figure out how to proceed, what path to take to learn things. Starting to rain pretty heavy here. The winds are kicking up. Hopefully the internet will hold up. So in the default RGB color space, I am pointed toward 3 images _RG and B, which do not match these particular images, whereas many of us PI users know that if you use this nomenclature, it will automatically load those images where they need to be. But we need to tell channel combination what images we want. We've got an R registered there. We have a G registered there. And just to remind you, or to show you, that you can also grab a view identifier tab, which is another feature like the icons that has many uses, and one of them is being able to drag and drop right there in the channel combination process. Now, anytime we batch process, for the most part, on more than one image, as here, rather than applying here, we want to do this. We want to apply globally, and that's the little blue bouncing ball. So click that. This assigns an image 07, and I'm going to change that by double-clicking the view identifier tab. Like I said, that has many uses, and name that RGB or chroma, chrominance, whatever you want to. And as is my habit, I will use the scroll wheel of my mouse to expand and zoom in there and get a the channels are linked right now. And when I zoom into there, you can see that the shadows sliders on the left and the midtone sliders in the middle are all aligned perfectly. So there's one sort of ham-fisted stretch being applied right now. And that's not what we want, because the data of this image needs to be repaired and calibrated before we can do that. So I want to uncheck the chain link icon and stretch again with the radioactive icon. And now I've got a much better visualization of the image. It might be hard to see that color that's lying there, but we've certainly got some blues and some pinks to come there. And when you look at the STF, you can see now that there is indeed a great deal of disparity between the RGB shadows and midtone sliders. So we need to get to work on this thing before we can really proceed with anything meaningful. Now I noticed that we've got a border on the right there that needs to go. And you now have a new feature if you're using WBPP, weighted batch preprocessing script, called auto crop. And that would have eliminated these things, but because this is data that was assembled long ago by I don't even know what, we see that we've got some problematic borders here that we're going to want to trim out. So I'm going to open my dynamic crop tool. Some of the processes are called dynamic, and they take hold of the image in a way that the standard processes don't. They lock on in a way that you really can't do anything else while that has the full attention of the view, as we call it in Pixinsight. This is a view. And you'll notice that we don't have that blue square or that blue ball. And so again, the dynamic processes work a little bit different. They have this execute rather than apply button, and this cancel button as well. So I'm going to float out my cursor here and get my little white hat on there, and I'm going to drag in on that edge. And I saw there was a little bit of a problem up top there. I think that was the only problematic edges, but I want to get in there close. And when I use the scroll wheel to zoom, I stay right over where the cursor is, which is a nice feature. So I don't want to lose anything more than I need to. So I think I can go all the way to there. Let's see what the top edge looks like. Yeah, right about here. Maybe we want to come down a row. And then let's see where we are here. On the right edge, can we go there? Yeah, let's go to there. Now I see, oops, got a little problem there. And of course, this is natural pixel drift because we've dithered and when we guide it as we should, and the subframes don't align over one another exactly because we did a star to star alignment. Now the frames don't match perfectly, right? So again, check out the auto crop feature in WBPP. You might like that. Otherwise, you're going to have to do a dynamic crop here. So I like that, and I'm going to execute, bada bing. And it tells me that I'm going to lose an astrometric solution, and I'll just have to reestablish that. And with that done, to zoom back out and click this little button, which is going to fit to view. And you'll see there's a little bit of a change there. And before I forget, although I don't think I will, I'm going to pull up the luminance image, which we haven't done anything to. And I'm going to go into the History Explorer of the RGB, and I'm going to repeat that crop. Before I do that, I need to cancel out of here. And there are 2 or 3 different ways to repeat a crop, but I like doing it this way. If I go into the History Explorer and find the RGB image, I will be shown the history. You'll see that there is an instance of dynamic crop there. And if I either double click that to open the process or merely drag and drop it on this luminance image, I will match that crop exactly. And we'll reset that view window, and we'll tuck that that luminance away. Now, let's see. Yep, we're aligned. We're well aligned. I got nervous there for a second when I saw the ghost of that image. Well, wait a second now. Why do we have this problem? Live TV, people.
Yeah, gotta love it.
Yep.
Gotta love it. Well, it looks like that they are aligned.
Yep.
Now, yeah. So we're not going to question that. I don't know what was done in preparation, perhaps at an earlier date, but they look aligned. Okay. So we'll go back to RGB. And speaking of that History Explorer, we want to maintain all of these steps that we perform, and we want to maintain them throughout the session and also a week or a month or a year from now if we come back here. And so unlike, for instance, Photoshop, we're able to preserve all of this work in a very nice way by saving projects. That can be done in the project toolbar, save project, Shift Control J, or file rather than save as, save project. And I'm going to rename this, and we'll call it M51 AstroWorld TV. And I will put my wacky initials there and just place this on the desktop. And want to use a bundled project, so I have one file rather than 2. Save that. And so this is really akin to a system ghost. It records every image, its position, its zoom and pan positions, previews that we might have created, working images, masks, and it tells us everything. It will tell us along the way what time they were performed, how long they took, what masks were in place when we used them. And so that's why it's so important to use the PI project feature. Now, unlike the Luminance, let's take a look at this. I don't see that same gradient that we saw in that Luminance image with the top being so much brighter than the bottom. You know, I see some issues, a little bit of banding back there, something odd here. And again, it's been a long time since these were calibrated, and I don't believe I calibrated them. But let's run a background modelization technique to just clean up any uneven field illumination, right? We could use ABE. We prefer, in most cases, DBE, dynamic background extraction. And if you're not hip to it, there is a standalone product by Frank Sackenheim and a couple of other German guys with a terrible name Braxpert.
Expert.
And
Yes.
it is a it is a standalone program, and I just want to point that out because we are finding that in many situations, Graxpert is superior, in our opinion, to DBE. Not all the times, but yeah. So definitely worth a download and checking it out. And the nice thing about it is, Gray Expert or Graxpert, however you want to say it, takes 32-bit floating point XISF files from Pixinsight. So there doesn't have to be any truncation of data or any alteration of file formats, and it works great. But in this case, we've got pretty simple to solve gradients here. In fact, there really isn't much to really do here at all. And I know that DBE is going to handle it just fine. So sample generation, you may be familiar with. You can automatically generate control points. You can also manually place them. For a long time, I was all about the manual placement. And I have found that particularly with difficult gradients, that more is indeed better. That more sample points is indeed better than fewer. So I've changed my thinking a little bit there, although again, a simple gradient like this be perfectly fine in placing manual sample points. And this little arrow, and always pay attention to your tooltips in Pixinsight, they're very helpful. It says reset the default sample radius to an automatically guessed value. I'm not exactly sure that I'm sold on its ability to guess, but what it does is it will give you some guideline for how big a sample would be. And if I were to place that just here so you can see it easily, it's a pretty darn small sample. And I think you want more pixels per sample than that. It's not a lot of information. And that, by the way, is the representation of that sample. Watch what happens as I drag and drop, and you can see it's changed. So that's what that is. And if I were to say, 25 and double that and say resize all, you will see that changes. And I can right click there and I take that back. I can use the delete key on my keyboard to get rid of that. I can also automatically generate and choose samples per row. And if I do that, generate, you can see that it pops up there automatically. So your choice. And honestly, we get a lot of angst about, oh my gosh, how should I use DBE, yada yada. And honestly, there is no absolutely right way, and you will get good results in a variety of ways. When I manually place samples, I tend to go in corners when I can. I tend to go, 12, 6, 3, 9. I'll split quadrants, and I'll put more sample points on particularly problematic areas, almost trying to tap DBE on the shoulder and say, hey, dude, have you noticed this really red corner over here? So that seems to help. But this is a perfectly good, yes.
Yeah, quick question for you. Is there an area of a photo of an image that you work on that you would want to avoid placing sample points other than other than of course nebulosity, perhaps?
Yeah, we're about to go there. So the good news is DBE. Yeah, the good news is that not in an AI type of way, but DBI quote unquote knows what its task is, and its task is to use wavelet deconstruction to look for really big stuff, really large scale, smooth structures, and say, that's a gradient. It's not the small stuff like the stars. It's not the medium-sized structures like the galaxy. It's big. It's large. So it knows, as designed to be able to target that. By the same token, we don't want to do things like that. And you'll notice that has changed a color. because that's fairly large structure, and that could get confused with any gradient that's there. So if I've automatically generated here, I'm going to want to move this sample off of the tail of that galaxy. I'm going to either want to delete this or move it to a new location. I'll get this one. You'll notice that black hole right there. Not a literal black hole, but so what that's telling me is, yes, I know you're sitting on a star. I see that's a star. I'm not going to include that in the calculation of the background, but by the same token, you might want to move that because you're losing a lot of sample area there. So it would be simple to just move that there. And if you're a freak, as I used to be, you can toggle through every sample point and determine whether it should be moved at all. You'll notice them as they become active. And again, I want to get that off of that tail of the whirlpool. We'll move this one a little bit. We'll get this a little bit off the galaxy. Definitely this one. And I'm trying to put them in areas that might be helpful. And so I wouldn't want to sit on, any reasonably large structure, be it diffraction spikes off of stars, bigger stars, structure in a galaxy or a nebula. But that's fine to me, right? And if you're not getting points where you want them, and it's not extremely vignetted, extremely dark, as long as it's kind of usable, you can either increase the tolerance a little bit, or sometimes the minimum sample weight to get them to turn okay. Now, my current tolerance is rather high, and I believe the default is 0.5. And so if I say resize all or regenerate, you'll notice that many of them have disappeared. And so I would up that tolerance to 1, let's say, generate again. And so I'm much lower at 1.0 than 1.75. And so this is going to be more useful. But guess what? I wound up putting my samples back where I don't want them again. So I might just delete this and delete this. And unless anybody is spotting anything that I'm not spotting, I think that's good. I think that's pretty good. Let me close up some of these sections here so we've got enough real estate to see. The target image correction is important, right? So if we've not used flat correction, or our flats really didn't do the job they should have, as we know, flats get divided into light frames. And so we would really want to use the division method if we were trying to get rid of a nasty vignetting. But in this case, we want subtraction because we're talking about additive gradients, right? Light pollution, light trespass, just any air glow, anything that gets into the frame. It's less predictable than is a multiplicative gradient such as vignetting. And so it's easy to, it's not easy, but subtraction is going to be the opposite of an additive gradient. So we want to use subtraction for a case like this for sure. I'm not going to discard the background model because I want you folks to see that background model. And I'm going to go ahead and replace the target image itself. I could uncheck that. It would generate a corrected version, and perhaps I would experiment on that corrected version before I actually applied it to this working version. But I'm going to go ahead and replace that. So I think we're ready to go. Again, another dynamic process. So it's going to use the little green check mark. And this is our background model that was subtracted from our working image, and we can't see anything, right? Again, it's a linear, it's an image generated from a linear image, and so we can't see anything. When I put a temporary auto stretch on there, we see that cyan, which is the dominant bias in the image. So it's important, if we want to really see what's going on, is to deselect the chain link icon, so that when we restretch with the radioactive icon, now we get to see more, and I'll put a boosted auto stretch on there as well. We get to see more of what's going on there. Now, I'll admit this is rather odd. That's not really something you typically want to see. Structure shouldn't start to get complex, bumpy, as our friend Rogelio Bernal Andreo once referred to it as, because it should be, again, smooth and non-complex. That's a bit concerning, but by the same token, I think once I relink these channels up and put a new auto stretch on and close DBE, that the image is going to look perfectly fine. So you could have gone back and moved some samples around to try to make that look less weird. But I've seen weird before, and I was pretty confident that the result would be good. In this case, it is. So take that with a grain of salt, right? You don't want complex, but by the same token, sometimes you really can't explain what it is that DBE is actually seeing, because you feel like your samples are in good places and the result is good. So just use a bit of caution there. So now we have a task which I would move to, which would be color calibration. I know that I also, in this linear form, and remember, we are still linear. I'm going to turn that off and turn that on again. I know that I'm going to want to take advantage of noise reduction in this linear state before I actually stretch. So not of great importance whether I do noise reduction now or I color calibrate first, but I'm gonna move on to color calibration. And the thing is, whichever method you're using, color calibration is using the stars to determine that color calibration. And I would submit that those stars are not noisy, and it's not going to matter much if I smooth here or not. So what order I do that in. Now, when I thought about this, I thought, and I'm doing one hand the other. I guess you can still see my camera. I'm not sure. But, color calibration, or SPCC, spectrophotometric color calibration, or dare I say, PCC, photometric color calibration. What we would say is that PCC is now considered obsolete because it was based on a much smaller star catalog than SPCC. And so SPC was the goal that they were working towards while they were developing the Gaia star catalog. And once they got all of that in place, PCC really can be forgotten. Color calibration is really easy to do. SPCC can be a bit of a pain in the neck. So I'm not sure which way to go. What I see observationally, visually, I see that color calibration, as simple as it is, does a rather good job. SPCC seems to do a bit better. And if anything, I think SPCC might err a bit on the blue side, and color calibration might err a bit on the slight reddish bias side. So how about we go for SPCC, and if we find it to be a pain in the, you know what, keister, we'll flip over to the good old color calibration. I remember when I cropped, it told me I was killing my astrometric solution. How many of you know about the Fitz header process found under the file menu? And if I dial up RGB, and of course this is now a combination of a red, a green, and a blue master file, and so it still has maintained its DEC and RA information, but it probably has lost the actual astrometric solution. And I'll know in a second, because when I open SPCC and try to apply it, it's going to tell me that there's no astrometric solution. Now, I'll take advantage of background neutralization as well when we do the color calibration, and that's going to require a preview, a sample. And so for the first time, we're gonna do that. We're gonna create a new preview. The quickest way on that on a Windows, at least computer, is Alt-N, and you'll note that that cursor changed from the default readout mode to the new preview mode. And I'm going to just select a kind of generic area of background. We've got lots of it on this particular image, and I might go here. At one time, it was very important to avoid stars, or at least to adjust for them using what used to be brightness values here, upper and lower limit, which are now standard deviation quotes. And so it will pretty much ignore any star that might be in the field, but I still am a bit old school. I try to avoid them when I can and just use background. Now, with that chosen, I want to say region of interest and from preview, and I'm going to select preview 01 of RGB. So now we'll get some neutralization along with the color calibration. Now, ASG, average spiral galaxy, would be my choice here. In fact, in most cases, it's what I would use. I've had some friends, acquaintances anecdotally say, oh, I like to use G2V star for nebulosity. I can't really speak to that. PI has always been about this spectrally agnostic approach. You know, let's get all the stars involved in the field rather than relying on a specific G2V type star, which of course is what we live under. So I'm going to use ASG. If you don't have a very specific sensor information, you can use the ideal QE, quantum efficiency curve. I'm going to guess that this was probably taken with a Kodak slash, what did they change to on semi, a 11,002, you know, what was used in the old SBIG. Maybe this is a 16803, and honestly, I guess if I used the Luminance and went file, fits header, Luminance, yeah, there it is, STL 11,002. And so that used to be that was once the greatest sensor available, but it's old and it's not listed here. And so I'm going to stick with the ideal QE curve. And I don't know this for a fact, but I think these were probably Astrodon filters, but an 11,002 is an interline sensor. And so I would want to change these to I. And, you know, at the end of the day, there are other things that affect color. You know, even though this is trying to define exactly what the sensor is, exactly what the filter was, well, what if you shot it in a stupid part of the sky and you were, you know, at the horizon and you were killing your blue by not shooting higher? Well, nothing is going to account for that, and so you can't really cover every possible scenario. But we do want to apply color calibration, and I believe that some folks now have the ability to load other sensors and other filter information in here, and maybe you can get more specific as to what you're using. You'll notice that you can actually pull up a curve of a specific filter, which is kind of neat. Now, all of that said, this is probably going to fail because I think our astrometric solution is not there, and so cannot execute. Oh, duh! This is my Luminance. Sorry. Let me tuck that away. And let's get back to here. And now let's fail for different reasons. No
Yeah.
astrometric solution. So what do? We turn to a script, and thank goodness for the script writers, right? So those not familiar, processes are developed by the P team, by the Pixinsight immediate team, but many very useful scripts are produced by them, but also by third-party folks who are very smart. And some of those scripts become so useful that they get rewritten from JavaScript into C++ and wind up as a mainline process in the general release. But I want to go to image analysis, and I want to go to the image solver. And that should pick up the RA and DEC information there. Now, let's see, what's the size of this? I'm looking down here. I can't see it because of my beta. Let me move that. I mean, that looks like a normal frame, 4,000 roughly by 2,600. So I don't believe there was any binning going on here. But an 11,002 has 9 micron pixels, not 18. So that may be an error in the FITS header. And so let's try this. I'm using my local server where I've downloaded the Gaia DR3 star catalog. Again, Pete will tell you I'm an impossible minimalist, and for a long time, no, I'm not downloading those star files. God darn it, they're too big. But you know, you'd go up to the internet and you'd have to wait, and you'd get a lot of failures too. It wouldn't say that there was a network error, but it would come back with an error, and I could tell you more times than not, it was because of the time it was taking to research those files. So let's try it with the local. And I'm getting millions of ransack errors. And I solved that, I believe, earlier today. Image analysis and image solver. And it's still coming back with that 18 microns. I've got the limiting magnitude up further than the default, which is like 12. I've got that higher. I'm just going to real quickly change that. Like I said, I think I had a failure and then a success on this today. I increased the sensitivity, and if we don't get it in 1 or 2 more times, we'll go back to good old color calibration. Polygonal algorithm, I think it was set at least default triangle similarity. You never need that unless you're working on mirror reversed images. Polygonal is more robust. So let's try that. And let me try that. And that's going to fail. And one more time, Warren, and then we're moving on. So script, image analysis, image solver, and I can't remember if I changed that back to 9 last time. Let's go with this. It doesn't like that. And one more time. Talk about dead air. I'm going to be fined by the FCC here. All right. Final time. And screw you. Okay. I thought I solved this. All right, so we're going back to good old color calibration. Now, for what it's worth, Dr. Ron, he's back on color calibration. And for what it's worth, I go between the two of them. I sometimes, as I said before, I sometimes think SPCC, and here comes the sneeze, sorry. SPCC might be a little on the blue heavy side. and color calibration might be a little red bias. So color calibration, much easier, much faster. No reason that you can't use it. Perfectly fine. For years, it's all we had. And so my background reference is going to be coded in hard here to my icon that I stored, RGB preview 01. And in reality, yes, I've got this image named RGB, which is my, and this is preview 01. So it's all set. It's pointing to it. It's going to use that as the background reference. And we also need a white reference, but guess what? The process, just like DBE, knew to use wavelets to deconstruct the image and look for large-scale problems. This is designed, it knows, to look for small-scale structures, which are, guess what? Stars, right? So I don't need to fill this in. It's going to automatically do that. And to prove to anybody that hasn't seen it yet, I'm going to say output the white reference so that you will see indeed that it knows what it's looking at. And again, it's going to gather up the stars using wavelets, and it's going to simply set a new white point based on the average star's color in the field. So I think we're ready to go there. And as you can see, very quick. It ran. It made an adjustment to the white balance, and this is the output of the white reference mask that we chose, and it indeed did use the stars. And so that was just for demo purposes. And now, anytime the statistics of an image change drastically, we've got to reset that temporary auto stretch, right? So again, still linear. But now we're going to, with the chain link, with the channels linked, we're going to put one single stretch on, and we don't see a tremendous change or improvement in all cases, but I'd submit we've got a little bit more blue going on here, and sometimes you'll see it more dramatically, that you've got good color on the works here. And I'm going to delete that preview. I'm going to right click and delete previews again. Why? Because Warren's a minimalist. Okay, now it's time for some linear noise reduction. And whereas in the past, I would have laboriously dialed in both the mask settings and the noise reduction settings with a very fine wavelet-based tool called MLT, Multiscale Linear Transform. These days, I'm going to say bye-bye MLT, because for what I think, what we all think at Masters of Pixinsight, and what many people in the community think, is that sometimes you have to pony up for better. And our friend Russell Croman, his company is RC Astro, Russell Croman, and he's a brilliant imager. He's been at it for decades. He is a silicon chip designer and a professional in the field who's really now semi-retired and putting all his efforts into his Astro-based tools. And this is where the AI, where the machine learning comes into play. And whereas I would have spent 5, 10, perhaps 15 minutes dialing in the MLT settings, I really, with the touch of a button, pretty much are going to get the kind of result that I want to get with Noise Exterminator. So they're not cheap, and somebody might think, well, I've just spent 240 euros or whatever it is today on Pixinsight. Why have I now got to go out and buy these plugins? Well, it's a special case. You've got a guy that's more advanced, as far as I know, than anyone in the field on training computers for certain tasks. And the PI gang, as brilliant as they are, mathematicians and all, and developers, they would be years behind on this. And so I know that Russ and Juan have had some very nice philosophical conversations behind the scenes, and I think that they're very much in favor of the kind of tools that that Russ has produced. Whereas in the past, I would have had to create an external mask to protect the stars and the galaxy from noise reduction, from being smoothed too much, while I dealt with the very significant noise of the background sky. I don't need a mask anymore because this, through the melting of much chocolate in Russ Croman's pantry, was trained on what noise looks like and how to get rid of it, and without touching significant structure. So you'll find yourself between 0.9, I think, and full on. And because this is chrominance and I've got luminance to come, I'm going to just go pedal to the metal. You've also got a little bit of unsharp mask sharpening that you can put in. And this is chrominance. And again, we've got luminance to provide that detail. And even though this is very non-destructive, because it is noise aware, I'm just going to dial that out. I don't think I need that. And again, I could create a preview and get some background sky and also some of that good signal of the galaxy. But I've become so confident in Noise Exterminator that I'm just going to go ahead and apply it for us. And we'll just check it after the fact.
Yeah, I mean.
By the way, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I was going to say about Russell, what he has done. Starting out, like with, I think it was Star Exterminator was the first one, then Noise, now
correct.
And now Blur. It's what he has done. It has changed. It has really changed the game, like we were saying earlier. The golden age of image processing, everything. It's just absolutely incredible what he has done and how he has trained it. These computers and and this intelligence. Suite. It's just amazing. I can't say enough about it.
Right. Yeah. Me too. So looking at this image, it's got a little bit of what I describe as that lumpy, clumpy look. And if you can kind of see what I mean, and it's not anything that's not in the data, but you can see it's there. But when it gets, like I'm looking at these dark little blobs and such, you can see that they're there. I'm not saying that they're legitimate structure, but I'm saying that they're in the data. The camera, whether it's the fault of the camera, the weakness of the signal, it's there. And it gets really nasty looking when it gets smooth, but it's not something that's an artifact that's being created by any kind of noise reduction. It's just making it more prevalent when it does get smooth like that. So that's a look I hate, that lumpy clumpy. But remember, we're on a particular stretch right now. And if we were to, reset that more in the ballpark of where we'll wind up, we'll see that stuff is going to be inconsequential. And especially when that better luminance signal goes on top of that. Now, we could have gone back down to 0.9, experimented all the way from, let's say, 0.5 to 0.9. But I think that gets the job done and the point across. And again, noise-wise, pretty amazing. And if you look at the better signal of the galaxy, you'll see that really no harm is done. And that's pretty cool. Let's get right out to where the arms get a little bit dimmer.
Yeah, look at that.
You can still see these significant structures here. And our eye will kind of lie to us and say, oh, that's too soft. But that's because we're looking at this very sharp, squarish, pixelated noise. And when that goes away, all we see is legitimate structure. It looks soft, but that's again because that noise, that pixelated noise, is out of the way. So I'm okay with that. Like I said, it is kind of lumpy, clumpy. If I really hate that, let's take this down a little bit. and apply again. I know what I wanted to say right when Eric was speaking was these tools can be quite processor intensive, as can PI at large, but particularly these tools. Once we get to Blur Exterminator, you're talking about millions of calculations in a matter of seconds. And so if you're a Windows person, be sure to be on the lookout. And if you're a Windows person, and if you have an NVIDIA video card, be on the lookout for information from us or from anyone else where you can activate through this CUDA software to speed these things up tremendously. If you meet the criteria of at least Windows 10 and an NVIDIA card. So I am going to go ahead and take this nonlinear. And as I do that, I just want to say to Dan and the crew, if I'm going long, I am perfectly willing to come back and continue at any point that we decide, okay, Warren, that's enough for tonight.
No, you're doing good. Usually
good.
about 10 minutes to 11, we do the prize giveaways. So you figure about you got 20, 25 minutes.
All right. Lots to do yet, but again, if you're willing to have me back, I'm perfectly willing to pick this up at another date. So, all right. So I'm going to use good old histogram transformation to take this now nonlinear. I didn't use Blur Exterminator. Why? Again, I've got Luminance to follow to really provide the detail and additional signal. And I don't see any repairs that need to be done here. My stars are round. I don't have chromatic aberration in the stars, which BXT can be very helpful for. I just don't think I need it here. And so I'm just going to skip it. And so histogram transformation, also be aware that masked stretch can be a very tasty way of stretching certain types of images, of which this, I would say, is not one that I would recommend. You also have the very fancy, what the heck do they call that thing? This generalized hyperbolic stretch, which I'm not overly jazzed about, but be aware of it. It can be interesting. I know why it was designed. I know what was trying to be accomplished, but I think you can get there in a simpler, faster way. So we know we have a little trick. We noticed that there were some tricks we could do with these new instance arrows, creating these icons and such. Another trick in combination with these two particular processes is to be able to transfer what is a transfer curve, this one, over to histogram transformation, because STF here doesn't have the ability to actually apply this in a permanent manner, while HT, histogram transformation, does. So if I grab new instance and I drop over here, you'll notice I've now got a transfer curve there. And at that point, if I really want to do this, what I would consider well, I want to turn off the temporary auto stretch from the STF here. And I want to take advantage of something we haven't seen yet tonight, which is a real-time preview. And that's a hollow blue ball as opposed to the apply globally solid blue ball. And that gives me this interim window of the real-time preview. So now any changes that I make over here in real time are going to affect this preview over here. And so I want to zoom in a little bit, and I can do that again with the scroll wheel of a traditional mouse, or I can add figures here. Now you don't see anything. You don't see the histogram. That's because I neglected to select a view, and I want to look at the RGB histogram. Now we can see a preview window up top telling me what this stretch would look like if I applied it but I want to get in closer to the real-time version of that histogram, which is still undeveloped and scrunched together because all of those pixel values are very close to one another and they're too dim to be seen without stretching, without developing the histogram. Now, I notice I've got a big shadows gap here on the left-hand side. The data really looks like it starts right about there at that toe. And as I zoom in closer to here, let's go to the max, 999. We can see that we really do have quite a distance to where the data really starts to rise off of the floor, which is about there. And as I raise that black point with this little caret slider here, watch the shadows clipping here. It tells me that I'm starting to clip 1 pixel of millions, 2 of millions, still in the just double digits here. And even if I go all the way here, now it's up to 1625. And then I go, well, I was really careful with my crop. I didn't leave any black edges that I saw that might be considered to be clipping. So am I really clipping any legitimate data? And I notice when I get about here, I'm already starting to get that washed out loss of contrast. And what I'll do is I'll zoom in to the real-time preview, and I won't look at my object of interest, but I'll look at that background sky. And I want to see just, there's that loss of contrast. And as I get closer to that toe, I'm looking at my background galaxies of my very tiny stars. And even though I hate clipping and it's showing me that I'm clipping, hundreds and a percentage of such, I'm also trusting my eye that I really don't feel like I'm doing that. And so I feel comfortable going to about there. And if I reestablish the main view and I zero in on the galaxy, don't forget, I've also got a midtone slider here where I can further manipulate the curve that I brought over from the STF. A little trick I like to do sometimes is highlight and copy Alt-C or a Control or Command-C and just store that original value just in case I want to paste it back in there again. But I'll experiment brightening up, look at what it's doing to my galaxy and my tail. And remember, the luminance is really going to drive the overall brightness of this image. So I don't need to go all that hot here. Also, I'm going to look at what I'm doing to halos of stars and stuff. And I'd rather understretch and stretch subsequently than not. And so this is color, and it really is going to mostly provide just that. So I'm pretty good right about there. And so I'll close my real-time preview, and I will permanently now apply that stretch and reset the tool. You'll see this is the new position of the histogram. There are these bright vertical lines in the graph. And you'll notice if you look really close that there is a dimmer vertical line in between those. And more times than not, your peaks are going to sit somewhere in the middle of the left edge and that first bright one along that dim one. Maybe not exactly there, but somewhere in that range. Ron likes to look for a 10% increase. He's more of a numbers guy. I'm more of a fly by the seat of my pants guy. And I'm also looking for how do my peaks look? And in this case, they are beautifully aligned, red, green, blue. And so that would be apropos of this image. Maybe not if it was a very hydrogen alpha rich nebula. That red might be a little bit more advanced, but in this case, it's a broadband, it's a galaxy. That's great. That's a great lineup there. So I'm happy with that. And what I'm going to do before I forget is save our project, just overwrite what we've already done. Any pressing questions, I guess I could take here. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep moving on. So it's saving all of the images, all of the previews, anything we've done in here. And you always want to just make sure in your process console that you get a green text image that says text font that says project generated okay, or project loaded okay. Just make sure. So there we are with our chrominance. And I'm going to tuck this here, and I'm going to open our luminance. And just so I don't freak out later, just want to make sure, yeah, we are well aligned there. Okay, luminance. There's nothing stopping me from using the instance of DBE from the color image. So History Explorer, still pointing at RGB. And so this is the history of the RGB. And you'll notice we have a DBE instance there. I would not want to do this. I would not want to drag and drop. That's perfectly acceptable way of applying something. But in this case, this has the statistics of a trichromic color image. And so we don't want those values. We just want the position of the samples. So rather than drag and dropping, I double clicked and I reopened that instance of DBE. And as you can see, it's the sample points that we dealt with before. I always use the expression, let the STF do your bidding. It's, again, a temporary display, but if you need it to be brighter, or you need to raise that temporary black point to really visualize what we're doing here, just have at it. And, I'm thinking maybe I want to move that one. I see the kind of that peak of that extension there. And I think, other than that, I really, well, let's get this a little bit further off that tail. I think we're fine there. Maybe I'll delete that one. And everything
Warren?
should be the same. Yep.
You got a question from Josh. I said, going back to SPCC, is there an optimal spot of when to run SPCC?
Yeah, so Josh, again, I wouldn't be real concerned whether I did noise reduction before color calibration or vice versa. But once we've got the background modelization, DBE, ABE, Graxford, once we get rid of those color gradients, that's a great time to run color calibration. And again, it wouldn't hurt anything if you did DBE, ABE, whatever, then noise reduction, and then color calibration. Okay. All right, so DBE back in place again, and we are going to apply that. We've got now a background model. We should observe, well, it's not as easy. I was going to say, well, you can see there is that light fall off at the bottom there. Not sure if that's electronic in this case or optical, but you've got that dark band in there. And I'm going to close DBE. I'm going to put a new stretch on that and put a boosted auto stretch on. And I think we can say that that's really eliminated that dark band of fall off under there. I think we're pretty nice and even there. Okay, so in some senses, luminance is easier because it's a single channel, and we don't have to deal with any color issues. So I'm going to move right to Blur Exterminator. And Blur Exterminator is an advanced deconvolution. And so anytime we're talking true deconvolution, we want to meet some criteria, most important of which is that it should be a linear image and it really should not be altered much at all, because we're trying to work based on the PSF, the point spread function, really the full width at half maximum values of the stars to get the job done. So BXT is one of the more expensive plugins by RC Astro, Russ Croman. If you don't own any of his plugins, I think it's about $99. There's a discount if you already own one, that you get discounts on any of the other plugins. But again, this has been trained on tons of data at different resolutions, different samplings. It has been trained in the presence of noise. So let it be a noisy image. Don't noise reduce before you apply deconvolution. And unlike the fixed, rigid PSF that would be established by traditional deconvolution, this is literally looking at every star and every object in the field on an independent basis and optimizing it. So, for instance, if you've got out of round stars in a corner, it's going to act differently on those than the nice round ones on axis. And it's really something else. So you have separate stellar adjustment here. And he calls it sharpen stars, but again, with deconvolution, we don't really like to use the term sharpen, because it's not a sharpening tool in the way an edge sharpener is, like on sharp masking or something like that. It's restorative, right? It's restoration. It's removing atmospheric blurring, which of course the end result is it looks sharper, right? But it's a restoration of trying to get rid of the atmospheric blurring over the course of the exposure. So if I take a real quick sample of just stars, I just want to show you my default is 0.08, and typically I am not adjusting halos, not making them smaller or larger. I like halos, they hold color, but they can be excessive depending on the optical system or the conditions they were taken in. You may well want to shrink them or perhaps expand them. But just let's watch real quickly on that sample. You should be able to see, just a bit of tightening. You'll notice, even though I haven't addressed the PSF, I'm using an automatic PSF. Some of the background galaxies are really appearing for the first time. And so just a mild, nice stellar enhancement. So I'm going to delete that. So we can use the auto PSF, but we're told that we really should use a manual PSF. And whereas you have three different ways to determine that. You can use the full width at half maximum eccentricity script. You can use dynamic PSF, or if you have the Hartmut-Bornemann scripts, you can use his PSF image script. But that's not part of the general release. You have to get that. But I have found recently, and based on a statement that Russ made, that nothing works better, in my opinion, than dynamic PSF. And you can use it in a simple way. You can use it on an on-axis star, particularly if you do have some coma or some eccentricity or distortion as you move out from the on-axis of the field. But if I were to click that star, I quickly look at the amplitude of it, and it's not saturated. That would be 1.0, or if it was really close to saturated, it would be 0.9 and change, but that's a 0.7. That's a great star. I could even try something smaller and dimmer here. Come on. And that's a 0.6. But what I'm really looking for here is what is the full width at half max, and it's right about 3.8 to 4. So why don't we look based on this, the y-axis here? Why don't we use 3.8 why don't we use 3.8? Okay. So and that, by the way, as you notice, that's another dynamic process. So I uncheck automatic and I use a manual PSF input at 3.8. And right now I'm at 0.75. These options down here, it's interesting. Go ahead and read the pop-ups. They're what I would call convenience features, but not typically necessary to engage. This is going to do what we want it to do. It's going to sharpen, again, quote unquote, sharpen. It's going to remove blurring at 2 different stages, stars and the non-stellar adjustments, which of course in this case would be our galaxy. So we saw what the stars were going to look like. Why don't we take a preview here of the galaxy, and I'm again going to make the STF do my bidding. I'm going to dim that down, the midtone, so I can see more of what's happening. And all of the artifact that frustrated us about the standard Pixinsight deconvolution, which was much trickier, much harder to use, was prone to some artifact, required 2 different types of masks to be done properly. That's all gone for us, and we would highly recommend for you too. That's all gone because this does a fantastic job by itself. Now, I neglected to mention you do have a real-time preview available here as well. And so we could actually take a real-time preview of that preview. And you can see some fantastic, and look at that edge on, everybody. Look at that edge on galaxy there. Let me move into that and into that. And let's see before, after. Before and after. And something that the standard deconvolution never did for me is any enhancement of dark structure. Whether you used a mask or not, you just couldn't get that stuff to do anything. You would get what we described as a wormy over-exaggeration of the highlights. And that was really all you got for a lot of work with deconvolution. And, you know, by Juan's admission, it was a 12-year-old algorithm. It really should have been revisited, sorry, but it hadn't been. And for those of us, myself, who love high-resolution galaxies and such, it was just critical to have better deconvolution, and I don't need to now go between maxim DL, converting to fits, and coming back into PI. I don't need to do that. Now, that's a little bit hot, I think. Let me take it down to 0.5, and we get rid of a little bit of that wormy intensity and still get some great detail development. Again, that's so amazing. Some of these background galaxies, what they'll do is just amazing. And so I'm pretty happy with that. And so I'll close the real-time preview and I'll delete that. And we'll
Warren,
apply.
you got one more question here from Billy's Astro.
Yes.
What does changing the AI version do for Blur Exterminator? Do you know?
This. So anytime, so it initially when you purchased and installed, you would select the AI that downloaded into the PI program files. But it seemed that Russ made a change because in the repositories, we now have the specific products, Blur, Noise, and Star Exterminator. And so it seems to me, and I think I'm correct in that we don't have to do this anymore. It just updates with the latest and greatest training that Russell has done. When you open PI and you see, hey, there's an update to Blur Exterminator, because you have that URL listed, it just automatically updates with the latest and greatest AI. And we would want that, right? Because it's further refining of the data. If I say, hey, hey, Russ, I noticed on this data that this is doing this or that, he's perfectly open to additional training. So that should answer that question, right?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, so I'm gonna apply this. And again, no masks. It's trained in the presence of noise. So it says, hey, I know what's noise. I know what's stronger signal. I'm ignoring that. And I'm moving right to the good stuff. I'm going to do a separate adjustment to the stars than I do to the galaxy. And there you go. So great result. And following that, I'm going to want to do noise exterminator. And I'm thinking that'd be a good place to stop if you do, Dan, but let me do this and you can think about that. And I'm returning here. Now this is, kind of what I call the money shot, right? Luminance provides the detail, the overall brightness, and all of that good stuff. So it's more important for me to spend time here making sure that I'm getting the best result of noise reduction that I can. We could, and you notice Noise Exterminator does not have a real-time preview, so we're going to have to work with standard previews. And again, I'll take lots of background noisy sky, some dim, somewhat noisy extensions in the arm, and some really good signal in the core. And I might adjust that a little bit. And this is going to be full on. And now I do have the detail up because I'd like to have a little bit of unsharp masking, noise aware, sharpening there. So again, brilliant, right? Incredible on the noise, leaving even the tiniest, dimmest stars and such, and really maintaining all of the legitimate structure. Almost might be losing a touch right in here. And as Russ will be the first to point out, this is never going, none of these tools will ever be perfect, but they're pretty damn close enough for me. I think there was a country song, Close Enough to Perfect, for me, right? Now, I want to grab that preview, and you'll notice now the zoom and pan is a little bit different. So I'll do that again, drag and drop. Now I've got two identical previews. This one, though, has already been processed. So I used a Control-Shift-Z to toggle before and after, before and after. This one I'm gonna lower, go all the way down to 75, just so we can see the 0.75, see the difference. And I know I'm going to follow up with a little bit of noise reduction after stretching anyway, but I do want more smoothness than that. So again, for me, with the stuff I work on typically, I'm more in the 0.9, 0.95 range. So that's the 0.95, and then you can hold the control key down and use your side arrow keys on your keyboard to toggle. But of course, I realize now I got to match my zoom and pan again, and now I can go back and forth. Now the brightness range is a little bit different, but you can also hold down the Alt key and watch what happens when I drag and drop. Now you see a little curve, don't you? You see that little tiny curve icon? I drop that. Now I've got perfectly equal temporary stretches. And so this isn't revealing too much to me, so I need to move in a little bit closer. And so that's the 100%, and this is the 90%. And I think, I'm good with the 0.9 in this case. I'll delete all. I will apply noise exterminator here, and just do a quick check of the result there. And I'm happy with that. And I don't know, Dan, I think that'd be a good place to stop perhaps? I'm going to save this project. You
Yep.
let me know.
Yeah, it sounds good. It's about we're at about 2 hours, and but love to have you in the M51 Part 2, I guess, and get the rest of the process down.
Yeah, let me. Yeah, okay. I'm going to resave this, and I'm going to make sure that I've got this in a safe spot, and you'll let me know when we can get together again, and I'll stop sharing and turn it over to you.
And well, hey, listen, Warren, great procedures, great workflow. I love watching you guys on Masters of Pixinsight on the Tuesday nights and once a month. I think it's an unbelievable tool that Warren, Pete, and Ron give us once a month, and they take care of pretty much everything you want. They have a beginners I guess block, an intermediate block, and all the photons to photos workshops that are just awesome. And at $35 a pop, it's well worth every single nickel, dime, and penny that you throw into it, because and we will all say this on the show all the time. You got 2 hours with some of the best in Pixinsight out there, and you get to learn from the actual masters and Pixinsight ambassadors. It's really, really cool. I love. I wish I made more of them, but just so you know, we're giving away a choice at NEEF, and you have to be at NEEF to win. We're going to be giving away a 1-year subscription to IP4AP, as long as you register your email at our booth, and also your choice of either the intermediate block of classes or the beginners block of classes. Your choice, but that looks like it's going to be the grand prize right now. So that's about $190 or so gift. So you got to be at NEEF to win that, though. So everybody, you got to be at NEEF for that. So it's a NEEF special.
Yeah, real quick, Warren, there was another question that I want to make sure we don't miss it before the end of the show, from Mike Astro asking, do you ever stretch your stars separately?
There are times where I'll, not really separately, but there will be times where I'll do that initial stretch and then maybe remove the stars at that point, because I really want to push the rest of the stuff without bringing the intensity of the stars up anymore. So if that's kind of where we're going with that, yeah, sometimes I do.
Nice.
And my overall philosophy, as we'll see in part 2, is that I do as much as I can before I take stars out. And I don't always feel compelled to, because I know how to make, for instance, star masks and masks. And sometimes I'm like, do I need to remove the stars? But certainly it can be very useful.
Awesome.
Nice.
Thank you.
Nice. Well, tonight we are actually giving away, because the next Masters of Pixinsight workshop is this Tuesday. So we're going to be giving away one class tonight for, if you want to use it for this Tuesday, or if not, you could use it for any other workshop that you wish. But we're giving away that, and we're also giving away a 1-year subscription for IP4AP tonight. So, just in the honor of Warren being on the show, we're going to be doing the 2 gifts tonight. So we're going to burn another IP4AP tonight. So, But we did get one more person on the wheel this week, so that goes up to 154 people on the wheel. Yeah,
That's
so
crazy. That is
that's
absolutely crazy.
yeah. So let's see if I can get this up here, and we'll get the massive wheel of fortune here. It's not showing my display too wide.
Let's see here.
I'll do it this way.
All right. We have 29 people watching. We got 29 thumbs up. So thank you guys. Really appreciate that.
We had up to
on YouTube.
We had up to 45, I think, at one point.
Yeah.
But here we go. So here is the wheel of fortune, I guess. And so this first spin will be for the Masters of Pixinsight workshop. So let me get my pen out because I always forget to write these down. And then I got to watch the show again.
I see a few of our clients.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of people on there.
A few. Yeah, there's a bunch that I don't know, but that's good. That's good.
All right, so here we go. Ready? First one for the first Masters of Pixinsight. MOP class is going to go to Gary Brown.
Gary Brown.
All right, Gary, we'll send you an email, and Pete Proul will get back to you on how to redeem your Pixinsight Masters of Pixinsight workshop. So there we go.
Congratulations, Gary.
All right, and this one is for the IP4AP 1 year. Here we go. Ready? And I know MX Quattro is itching to see if he wins something. He's been trying to win for 2 years. So let's see. Oh, Scotty C.
All right.
Scott Cullen. And is Bob even close? Bob isn't even close to that. So sorry, Bob. But Scott, congrats. We'll send you an email as well. And Pete will get back to you as well on how to redeem your prize there. So there you go.
All right.
Awesome. So I'll send everybody that email tonight. And that's good to go. So Warren, again, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us, and spending a couple hours with the AstroWorld people, and
I enjoyed.
Also appreciate all the support that you and Ron and Pete have given the show. You guys have been staunch supporters of us since literally day one. And so I just want to say thank you and thank the rest of the guys over there for me, because you guys have been awesome.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure.
All right. So any other questions?
I love the shirt. Love the shirt.
Oh yeah. Any other questions in the chat, Eric? Or
no. I think that was it. That was the last one.
Okay, cool. So we'll just do the round robin final thoughts, and we'll say goodnight to Warren so he could we could all take a nap. But Eric,
yeah,
thoughts,
no. Again, I'm looking forward to part 2 here, Warren. So thank you again for joining us. Really appreciate it, and really enjoy having you on. I know this was our first time, so I hope first of several times you'll be on and hanging out with us, as well as to our chat and our audience and everybody. We really appreciate your support and what you're doing for us, showing your support. And again, if you like what we have been doing here, you like presentations like Warren's, and appreciate what we're trying to get done here for AstroWorld TV, don't forget to click that thumbs up, give us a like in Facebook, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to ring that bell so you can get notified when we got new videos and everything coming out. And again, can't wait to see everybody coming next week when we head over to NEAF. And yeah, that's really all I got. So yeah.
Pete?
Well, my sentiments exactly, Eric. I think Eric speaks for both of us. Warren, a pleasure, and looking forward to part 2.
Yeah, me too. Been great. Thank you.
Warren, you got any final thoughts to the masses?
Final thoughts.
You do one of these, Karnak.
The answer is 42. It's 42, everybody. That's the answer.
Yeah, and the question is, what do you get when you multiply 6 by 9? Yeah, exactly.
Clear skies, clear and dark skies.
I think that one's 54.
Don't tell that to me. Tell it to Douglas Adams. Don't, that's, but yeah, clear skies. Yeah, absolutely. So again, Warren, after NEAF, we'll get on the horn with the email to you regarding part 2 of the M51 processing.
Great.
And we'll get going on that, because I know a lot of people are interested in a lot more of the color manipulation and all that kind of stuff that we got to do. So
yeah, we'll have some fun.
Yeah. Awesome. Again, great time, man. Thank you so much. Everybody, thank you for watching tonight. Thank you, Warren, for coming on. And don't forget, later on, well, Friday is going to be our last show for next week. We're going to be all at NEAF and NEAC and Jersey, and it's going to be crazy. So it's going to be a good time, and we'll try and go live sometime, but knowing the internet in that gymnasium, it's not probably going to be good. So it's probably not going to be conducive to any live. But we will definitely have interviews and stuff like that we'll be recording at NEAF that will be going on at a later date on the show. So be on the lookout for that. Also, everybody's been hearing rumors around AstroWorld retail. AstroWorldTelescopes.com is live right now as we speak, so you can go there. You could order stuff from Explore Scientific, Pegasus Astro, Player One cameras, the Primaluce lab. I'm sorry, the Eagle 5 just came out, so you're able to do that. So go there and check it out. And thank you, everybody, for your support, and just come and hang out with us on Friday night. Awesome. Thank you, Warren, again, Pete, Eric. Everybody have a good night. And remember, as always, keep imaging, keep educating, and clear skies. And we'll see you Friday night. Have a good night, everybody.
See everybody.